You're operating at about 10% of what you know how to do. Not 10% of your potential, not 10% of what you could learn someday, 10% of what you know right now. And you're calling it your best. After 30 years of teaching people how to perform under pressure, I've seen this pattern over and over. And it doesn't matter who you are or what you do or how hard you think you're working. The number is roughly the same, about 10%. And here's the question nobody ever asks. How much of what you know are you actually using? And if what I said is true about you operating at 10%, and only you know if it is, the problem isn't capability or talent, and it's not effort. It's the mechanism behind why the other 90% never gets touched. And nobody has ever explained that mechanism to you. Without it, nothing changes. Today we go deeper. We talk about what standards actually do to your thinking, your effort, your capability, and why without understanding this, you'll spend your entire life working hard inside a tiny percentage of what you're actually capable of. So, let's go. Now I need to start with a definition nobody has ever given you. What does do your best actually mean? Because you've heard it your entire life from parents, from coaches, from teachers, from every motivational video ever made. Do your best. Now, think about this. Nobody ever defined what that means. So it became a feeling. I feel like I did my best, which is completely disconnected from any measurable reality. Here's the real definition. Doing your best means using 100% of the knowledge you have that you're capable of using. Your best is a ratio. The skills and knowledge you're actually deploying divided by what you're actually capable of deploying. Let me show you what I mean. I taught martial arts for over 30 years. When a student trained with me, I knew exactly what they had been taught. I proved their capability to them in multiple ways, gave them multiple explanations of the stuff, lots of repetition until they demonstrated that they understood the moves or concepts and had the capability to perform them. Now let's say the student learned 10 techniques. They could execute them all. They had proven it in training. I knew their capability, they knew their capability. Then we'd go to a tournament and they would use only 2 of the 10. And the ones that did that would, of course, lose. And here's the thing, there's no way that student did their best. Not because they didn't try hard, because the ratio was wrong. 2 out of 10 techniques is not their best. It wasn't even close to their best. Now, apply that to your own life. How much of what you know how to do are you actually doing? And I'm not immune to it. I had this realization sitting in my own driveway. I was frustrated with my business and I asked myself, honestly, am I doing my very best to develop this business? And I realized I knew 100 small things that I could do to move things forward. I was capable of all of them. I had done them in the past and I was using about 10 of them. So just 10%. I was working really hard at the 10% and calling it effort. So I asked myself a different question. What would happen if I actually used everything that I know? So I did it, and things improved significantly. The capability was already there. It was always there, sitting unused inside a center that never demanded it show up. Your best isn't how hard you try within what you're already doing. Your best is the full deployment of everything you actually know and can do. And almost nobody is anywhere near it. And here's where it gets interesting, because the obvious question is, if the capability is already there, why isn't it being deployed? And most people in this space will tell you it's a thinking problem, a mindset problem, a motivation problem, but they're wrong. It's a standards problem. And here's the difference. Most people believe that if you change your thinking, your standards will follow. But that's backwards. Here's how it actually works. Your standards decide what you're willing to think about. What you think about decides how much effort you put in. The effort you deploy decides your outcome. So standards first, thinking second. Everything else follows after that. The standard is upstream of thinking. Think about the student I described earlier. He knew 10 techniques, proved them in training, but the moment the competition pressure showed up, a lower standard took over. It wasn't one that they consciously chose. It was one based on fear that says, I'll play it safe, I'll be safe, I'll not try things because I need to be safe. And the standard immediately decided what he was willing to think about. And it wasn't the 8 other techniques that he knew. It wasn't even 5 of them. It was 2. He didn't forget the others. His standard stopped allowing them. So if your standard is low, your thinking is contained inside of the standard. You don't think about what you don't require of yourself. You don't deploy what your standard doesn't demand. This is why change your mindset doesn't work without changing the standard first. You can't think your way to a higher standard. You have to set a high standard first, and the thinking expands automatically to fill it. That's the mechanism that nobody explains. And it means that the difference between the person who's stuck and the person who's moving isn't their thinking, it's their standards. Because the standard decides what thinking is even allowed to happen. Change the standard first. The thinking takes care of itself. Now here's the part that explains how most people ended up at 10%. A standard doesn't just guide your behavior, it defines the size of the space your capability is allowed to fill. Think of it like a container. The standard is the container, your capability is the water. And here's the thing about containers. The water doesn't choose the container. The container decides how much water gets to exist inside. So here's the problem with that. Most people never choose their container. It was imposed on them by their environment, by the room they grew up in, by the people around them, by the culture they absorbed without questioning it. And that means the container you're operating inside right now was imposed by people who never measured your actual capability. They just grabbed a container that fit theirs and handed it to you. Which means the ceiling you keep bumping up against isn't your limit. It's just the top of the container someone else built. And most people spend their entire lives bumping against that ceiling, assuming it's real, assuming it represents what they're actually capable of, never questioning whether the container itself is the problem. This is what I call inherited standards, and they're the most dangerous kind because they feel like yours. You've had them so long they feel natural, they feel normal and true, but they're not yours. You just never question them. An inherited standard assumes your capability. A chosen standard explores it. Those are not the same thing, and the difference between them is the difference between operating at 10% and finding out what you're actually capable of. Now, let's say you decide to choose your own standard. You do the belief work, you claim the identity, you sit down and write out all your standards. Here's where most people make a critical mistake. They write closed standards. A closed standard sounds like this. I'll go to the gym 3 times a week. I will save 10% of every paycheck. I will read for 30 minutes every night. Those sound like standards. They're specific, they're measurable. They feel what you would call disciplined, although that's not what discipline is, but I digress. But here's the problem with that. A closed standard tells you when you're done. I went to the gym 3 times. Done. Standard met. And now the burger at lunch is justified because I already fulfilled my standard. I mean, what are you trying to accomplish by going to the gym 3 times a week? Is it health? Is it well-being? If health is what you want and you go to the gym 3 times per week, but then you eat a burger, cake, and drink sodas, you're not really gaining health. You see what happened? The standard became a permission slip for everything outside it. It's a ceiling disguised as a floor. And here's the other problem with closed standards. Human adaptation. Your body adapts, your mind adapts. The standard that challenged you becomes the standard that maintains you. Then the standard that maintains you becomes the standard that limits you. Let's say you do 50 push-ups a day. Your body adapts in about a week. Now 50 push-ups doesn't do anything for you, but your standard is 50, so you do 50. That's just a well-maintained ceiling. And here's what a growth standard looks like instead of that. I will seek out, study, and commit to my health every single day. I will do whatever the winners do. I will deploy my best in every situation. Notice what those standards do differently. They can never be fully satisfied because what's healthy keeps expanding as you learn more. What winners do keeps evolving. What your best is today won't be your best next month. A growth standard is a direction, not a destination. It forces perpetual curiosity. You can't check it off. You can only keep asking, am I moving in the right direction? Am I deploying more than I was yesterday? Closed standards make you readable and predictable. Growth standards keep you adaptive, curious, always moving. One removes thinking, the other demands it. And the only way to get from 10% deployment to full deployment is a standard that never stops demanding more. Now I need to say something that contradicts most of what you've been told. I don't believe in habits. Not because habits don't matter, but Because habits are the enemy of the thing you're actually trying to build. Here's why. A habit is designed to remove thinking from the equation. Stimulus, response, reward, all automated. No thinking required. That sounds efficient. It's actually a trap because growth only happens through adaptation, and adaptation requires thinking. I teach fighting, and the most dangerous thing a fighter can develop is a habit, because a habit is readable. If I know your favorite punch, your favorite kick, your favorite block, I can figure out your entire pattern. I actually call it reading your book. And once I know your pattern, it's just a matter of timing. I don't even have to be better than you. I just have to wait for the habit to show up, and I'll hit you every time. Now apply that to your own life. You don't have one opponent in a ring. You have multiple opponents in life. It's temptation, it's pressure, it's the hard moment that shows up the same way every time. And if you've built a habit, a pattern, you won't question or change your response. The same habit will play out every single time, and it hits you every time. Now, not every habit is the enemy. Brushing your teeth, taking a shower, those are fine and welcomed. The problem is when you stop evaluating individual actions because the habit gave you permission to stop thinking about them. What if instead of building habits, you ask one question before every action? Does this get me closer to what I want or further away? Does scrolling TikTok move me closer to where I want to be or further away? Does eating that burger make me more healthy or less? Does responding in anger make my relationship better or worse? See how fast that works? And here's what makes it powerful. The question doesn't change, but the answers will. Sometimes you'll find a better path. Sometimes you'll find that you're chasing the wrong thing entirely. Either way, the question keeps refining you. Now, Western culture is built around not thinking. Habits, routines, entertainment, scrolling, all of it is infrastructure designed to reduce how much thinking you have to do. And you only adapt when you're willing to think. People that stop thinking stop growing. All you really have to do to stand out from other people is think. That's it. That's the whole competitive advantage. Not talent, not opportunity, not luck, just the decision to keep thinking when everyone around you automated the process away. A growth standard forces that every single day because I will do whatever the winners do can't be automated. It requires you to keep asking, what do winners actually do? Keep studying, keep adapting, keep thinking. That's better than a habit. That's a living standard, and that's what gets you from 10% to full deployment of your true capability. Now here's what it actually looks like when it's actually working. You have a growth standard. It demands thinking. It demands full deployment of everything you know. So you deploy everything you know. You bring all of it. You hold nothing back. And one of two things happens. First possibility, it works. Outcomes improve. The standard is producing what it's supposed to produce. Good. Note it. Keep going. And now ask the next question. Can I deploy even more? Can I do this better? Has my capability expanded since the last time I asked? That's the growth loop. It never closes because a growth standard never lets it close. Now here's the second possibility. You deploy everything you know, full deployment, nothing held back, and it doesn't work. Most people call that failure, but it's not failure. It's actually the most valuable moment available to you because it means you've hit the edge of your current capability. It's not a false ceiling. It's not an inherited container, the actual edge of what you currently know how to do. And now you have real information, not I failed or I'm not good enough, just this. I've deployed everything I have and it wasn't enough, which means I need more knowledge or information. It's time to expand what I know. So you have to learn, you have to study, you have to train, you add to the container. And then you deploy that and test it again. The loop is self-generating. It never closes because every time you hit the edge moves. And here's what that means for your life. You never actually know where your ceiling is. You only know where your current edge is. And the only way to find the edge is full deployment, which means every day that you hold something back, you're not protecting yourself from failure. You're just avoiding the information that would tell you exactly what to work on next. Full deployment isn't a grind, it's a navigation system. So deploy everything, read the result, adjust, and deploy again. That's the loop. That's how it works. Now what we just walked through has a name. That moment when you deploy everything you have and it still wasn't enough, I call it the cutting edge of your personal evolution. And I want to be clear about what that moment actually is, because most people misread it completely. It's not failure, it's confirmation. It's proof that your standard held, that you didn't quit at 30%, that you brought everything you had and found your personal best. Congratulations. Seriously. You just did something most people never do. You found the wall that you needed to push on. Most people never get there. And it's not because they're incapable, because their standard never required them to find it. You want to find it, because finding it means you're actually in the game. Now here's the pivot point. When you hit that edge, you have exactly two choices. Add to what you know, research, study, train, expand, and come back better, or quit and call the edge your limit. One is challenging, I'm not gonna lie, but it's fun and it's incredibly satisfying. The other is easy. And which one you choose has everything to do with your identity, which is who you are as a person. Who you believe you are determines what you do at that moment. The person who's curious about how awesome they can be, they stay in the game. The person who shuts it down because they feel like they can't, they're not smart enough, or they're not talented enough, they quit and will never know their true capability. Same moment, same result, completely different story from that point forward. This is why the framework is a loop, not a line. Standards force thinking. Thinking drives deployment. Full deployment finds the edge. The edge demands more knowledge. More knowledge raises the standard, and the loop runs again at a higher level than before. That's what your personal evolution actually looks like. And the only way to stay in it is decide before you get to the edge who you're going to be when you get there. Now here's what happens when you actually do all of this. When you set growth standards, when you ask the question about every action, when you deploy everything you know and find the cutting edge of your personal evolution, when you stay curious instead of quitting, you become excellent. You stand out, you get noticed, you get picked, you get opportunities that you didn't before, and all that comes with it. The money, the recognition, the achievements, the awards, the material things, but they're all byproducts. That's it. They're what excellence produces naturally when you stay committed to the process. And here's what almost every motivational system gets completely backwards. They tell you to chase those byproducts, visualize them, want them bad enough, make them your why. And that's the trap, because the moment the award becomes the point of your effort, you stop focusing on the thing that produced it. You stop deploying, you stop exploring, you stop asking what you're capable of. The trophy becomes the headstone. So tend the process. Stay curious about your own capability. Keep exploring what you haven't found yet, because that's the real adventure. Chase excellence. The byproducts take care of themselves. So let's come back to where it all started. You're at 10%, you know what to do, you know how to do it, you are capable of doing it, and you're choosing not to. That's not a capability problem, that's a standards problem, because nobody ever told you any of this. Nobody ever gave you a definition of what your best actually is. Nobody showed you that you inherited a container someone else imposed. Nobody explained the difference between a closed standard and a growth standard. Nobody told you habits kill the thinking that requires growth. Nobody walked you through what full deployment looks like, or what it means when you find the edge of your personal evolution. Nobody told you that everything you're chasing is just a byproduct of excellence that you haven't committed to yet. That's what this video was. I was just trying to fill in the gap. And now you know. So here is your one job after this video. One thing, ask yourself honestly, what do I know how to do that I'm not doing? Write it down. Look at the ratio between what you know to do and what you're actually doing, and set one growth standard that demands more of what's already there. One standard, no escape clause, no ceiling built into it, just a direction that keeps asking, what else am I capable of? That's where it starts. And if you think that's the hard part, just wait. Because next we talk about discipline, and I already know what you think it is, but trust me, you're wrong. If you found value in this video or know someone who'd benefit from the information, subscribe and share it, because I'm just getting started.